Hello, Patreon people. Welcome to our weekly update. As always, I'm Professor Moptop. As always, thank you a million times over. I hope everyone is wonderful. This week in Professor Moptop Audio, you're going to be getting 4 hunks of audio covering 2 songs from the White Album. The first one is Sexy Sadie. It's one of the ones that weren't actually written in India, although I guess it was written in India. It wasn't written at Maharishi's camp. It was written on the way out of Maharishi's camp. When things went bad in India, there were some rumors about Maharishi and what he may or may not have been saying to some of the female attendees of his camp. Prudence Farrow specifically, and Mia Farrow were some of the women he may have possibly made advances over. This has always been unconfirmed and no one's really sure, but because of these rumors, John as well as George were a little bit angry at Maharishi. They may have had a little bit of an issue. And when they split, they were in a hurry to get out. They wanted to get home in a hurry. They were in a long, hot cab ride home, and they started thinking perhaps that there was some black magic being used against them. Well, in the back of this cab, John started singing the song Sexy Sadie, although at the time it was Maharishi, What Have You Done? And all the terrible things that Sexy Sadie does in the song. There was a little bit of strange inspiration from a place you wouldn't really expect, which was Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. You'll hear Moptop talking about that within the audio. When they got back, John played it for Paul in the studio, complete with Maharishi and the dirty words. It was Paul and George who convinced him to lighten it up a bit and not make it as bitter. When they first recorded it, it was John on electric guitar, Paul on the organ, George on the acoustic guitar, and Ringo on the drums. Now, this was early on in the sessions, and they were playing, and it was Yoko Ono who said, I think you guys could do it a little bit better. And while they might have been a little bit surprised by the fact that someone was mentioning that they think their music could be a little bit better, they also knew that Yoko Ono was right in this case. And when they tried it again, they pepped it up a little bit, they tightened it up a little bit, and that's what ultimately the finished product sounded most like. You'll hear 2 parts about that. This is really interesting. You're also going to hear about possibly the loudest song ever. It's Helter Skelter. It is a McCartney composition, and as they've said consistently over the years, Charles Manson has nothing to do with it. Moptop talks a little bit about Charles Manson. George called all the California stuff Californian shagnasties. You'll hear Moptop saying that a bunch of times. What Helter Skelter really is all about, it's about Paul McCartney reading an article about Pete Townsend from The Who was bragging that they had recorded the heaviest song ever. And if McCartney had this attitude that if someone else could do it, we can do it too, and we can do it better. So he started recording Helter Skelter, which is actually about a curly slide. It's one of those English slides that starts at the top and goes around and goes to the bottom, just like the song literally says. It's very clever because it's just about a kid's toy, even though it sounds much more sinister than that. It was originally a little bit slower, quite a bit slower. It became faster as the sessions wore on. There were some long jams. One take was 27 minutes long. Apparently this still exists in Paul McCartney's private collection. I would like to eventually hear it one day. They recorded it for a couple days and it consistently got louder and louder. You'll hear some about the recording sessions. This was when George Martin was not around, so they played quite a bit in his absence. At the very end of the song, we hear a fade out and then it fades back in. This was said to be inspired by Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, who had recorded Freak Out, which was an album that the band was really interested in. There are some background vocals added on top of all the loud, heavy guitar distortion. They decided to keep it kind of Beatle-y and keep some background vocals in it. There's also a little bit of an element of the band maybe trashing their instruments at the end, which is what they were trying to imitate with The Who. And on top of all that, at the very end, we hear someone yelling, "I got blisters on my fingers," and that is Ringo Starr, who had been drumming very hard and very consistently heavy for a couple hours, and he literally had blisters on his fingers. He shouted it out, and when they were mixing the album, they said, well, we should keep this, and I'm glad they did. That does it for another wonderful week here at Beatle University. Thank you so much, as always, for being part of my Patreon family. Thank you so much for listening to these every week. As always, if you have any questions, get in touch with me. There's a million ways to do it, and I know you know how to get in touch with me. Thank you so much. I'm Professor Moptop.